Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation. From New York City, this is Theater Talk. I'm the show's producer, Susan Haskins.
And I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
We are very blessed right now on Broadway to have Arthur Laurents, one of the great masters, doing a fresh take on his masterpiece, West Side Story.
And this terrific revival of West Side Story comes on the heels of a brilliant revival of Gypsy that Arthur wrote and also directed last year, starring Patti LuPone. And Arthur has a terrific new book out now called Mainly on Directing, and we are delighted that he's back on Theater Talk after a few years. We had you on a few years ago when your memoir came out.
That's right.
Yeah, so well, welcome
back. I had
back.
a good time.
Yes, we'll try to make it as pleasant this time as it was that time. I have to say, Arthur, you are at 90 years old now.
No, 91.
91, the most in-demand director on Broadway at this point. How does that make you feel?
Well, you know, when you're in the next day, you may well be out.
Yes.
And that's how I feel.
Right. I watched you at West Side Story last night. I mean, I was enjoying the production, but I was also watching you sort of take your notes and examine the production. And when the girl playing Maria sang Pretty in Spanish, because this is the bilingual production, I saw you just beaming. Just a big, big smile on your face. Are you thinking she's wonderful, or are you thinking I directed her, I cast her, I created
No, I
this?
just love that girl.
Yeah, what's her name?
Her name is Josefina Scaglione. Mm-hmm. She's from Buenos Aires. Mm-hmm. We call her Josa. And she is extraordinary because she's totally grounded. Mm-hmm. She's not a diva in any sense. She's enormously talented. She's fun.
Mm-hmm. Completely natural on stage.
Yeah, she's 21, and I say 41. Because it's incredible how wise that girl is. And yet, she's also a young girl.
How did you hit on this idea to do it, to do the bilingual West Side Story?
It wasn't my idea. My late partner, Tom Hatcher, he was fluent in Spanish. Mm-hmm. And he saw in Bogota, Colombia, a Spanish language production of West Side. And when you see it where the hometown language is Spanish, the Sharks became the heroes and the Jets were the villains. So he told me that, and I thought it'd be terrific if we could do a production here which equalized the gangs somehow. Mm-hmm. And making them both villains, which they are. Yeah. And he said, why not have the Sharks speak and sing Spanish wherever they naturally would? Mm-hmm.
Because, of course, when you wrote it, you didn't conceive them as villains, the Hispanics as villains.
No, that's because it's odd, really is odd about the attitude in this country. I mean, here we are now where I think 40% of the population is Hispanic. And I get letters recently saying, this is America, speak English.
You're kidding.
No.
Really? From the people who've seen this production?
Yeah.
Huh.
In this day and age. What it is, it may be the age of Obama, but a lot of people don't want change.
Yeah. You had super titles when you tried out in Washington, right, for the Spanish?
Threw them out.
Why did you throw them out?
Well, for two reasons. One was, whether you looked at them or not, they were very distracting. You see these flickering lights on both sides. The other was Lin Miranda, who generously did the translation.
The kid who created In the Heights.
Yeah, and they had nothing to do with the original lyrics. So if people knew Spanish, and they saw on the titles, the English, they thought, what's going on here?
Yeah, yeah. I found last night at the show, I sat in front of a row of Hispanic people, maybe Puerto Rican, I don't know. And when America, that great comic song, comes out, and you have all the jokes about Puerto Rico and all that kind of stuff.
Hundreds of flowers in full bloom. Hundreds of people in each room.
And I was thinking, you know, the politically correct people could say, oh, that's so old-fashioned, and those jokes are really kind of, you know, anti-Puerto Rican, not very good. Behind me, the Hispanics listening to it were laughing the loudest at all of the jokes in America. Do you find Hispanic audiences really responding to this show in a way that perhaps they never have before?
People have come up to me, Hispanics, with tears in their eyes saying thank you. Because they never expected to be represented authentically on Broadway. And it's very gratifying.
Yeah. Going to the book, mainly on directing, and linking it up with this production of West Side Story and your really terrific production last year of Gypsy, one of the points you keep making in the book, and what you've done, I think, with both West Side and Gypsy, is you have attempted to clear out all the musical theater gimmickry around these shows.
Right.
Why, at this point in your life, have you decided to do that, and why did you not do that when you originally created these stories?
Well, everything's changed, including me. And one reason is I see no point in doing a revival unless you have a fresh approach. And with Gypsy, I began examining. It wasn't that I had written it. I'd forgotten that I'd written it. But suddenly you think, wait a minute. You take a number like Gimmick, which, you know, was put in to be a showstopper, period. Well, it didn't belong in the kind of show I was doing, which was a play with music. So you had to find a reason for it being there. Actually, it was very simple. The three old strippers were teaching this young girl they assumed wanted to be a stripper how to strip. But you get in West Side, two numbers were a big problem. The first is the Jet song. Well, in 1957, that was a musical comedy number. And that's all it was.
Just a big, splashy opening.
Yeah, get them going.
Yeah.
And I had to pull that into the show. And what is it really about? And what it really is about, a personal relationship between Riff and Tony. And he's saying he's going to be part of the gang because once you're a Jet, you remain a Jet, and it's terrific. The harder one was Krupke.
Officer Krupke, the comic song.
Officer Krupke, we're very upset. We never had the love that every child ought to get. We ain't no delinquents when misunderstood. Deep down inside us there is good, there is good.
Which was my fault. Because I had to convince my collaborators originally to put a comedy song in the second act. I got very grand and used Shakespeare's Porter scenes as an example.
And then you were working in sort of the old traditional world of musical comedy where you had to have a light number after a number.
You always had what was hopefully a showstopper. When you look at what happened, these kids, for the first time, see death.
Yeah.
Are they going to clown around?
Yeah.
That was a hard one. And I tried one version in Washington, which went too far the other way, and then ended up with this, which has the same music, the notes, and the words as the original, but is done entirely differently.
It's much darker.
Oh, it's much darker. And still stops the show, as it were. But also I got a side benefit to it, and probably nobody notices but me, but it makes me happy.
Which is?
Two of the Jets object to it, and they don't want any part of it.
Yes, yeah.
Well, the next time you see them, they're in the drugstore for the taunting scene. And what brings them back to the gang? Bigotry. They're all bigots. Now, as I say, probably nobody notices but me,
That's
but
very
it's
interesting.
there.
Because they are, or the taunting, otherwise known as the rape scene, yeah.
Right,
yeah.
it is a rape scene.
Another interesting thing is the way you dealt with There's a Place for Us, which back in the 50s was honoring the convention of the second act ballet. which became passé in a certain sense.
Well,
but
I
you've
say
integrated,
in the book,
yeah.
No matter how you slice it, the second act ballet is the second act ballet, which is gone.
That's gone. And
so
for good reason. Yeah.
And so was a lot of the original ballet.
Yeah, yeah.
It's too late for them to attack us. But actually, the Robbins estate was very good about that.
Well, he got his box. Still, he has his box on the...
A lot of the beautiful dancing is there, but it has a focus, which is Tony and Maria. They weren't in the original.
Really? Well, because I don't remember
you'd be
that.
surprised at the number of people who come up and say that they saw this and that. They never saw it. It never was. One man came up the other night and said, "Why don't you put back the 4-letter words?" Well, there weren't any.
Of all your collaborators on West Side Story, the one who's still here is Stephen Sondheim. Did he raise any objections? How does he approach this, where you've sort of taken a lot of material and put your focus to it?
You might ask him.
I don't know if he's booked, Arthur.
Well,
we haven't Stephen Sondheim on.
We can't seem to get him on this show. I don't know why.
I don't know why.
I won't speak.
Well,
for
Steve did say something very dryly, I thought, in some interview. He said he called it West Side Story Olé.
He said.
Yeah, that's what he called it, West Side Story Olé.
Well.
With milk, eh?
Well, I won't push you too far on the Sondheim thing, but you do say something interesting about Steve in the book, that when he saw the first run-through of Gypsy at just before it opened on Broadway, and you said it was a tremendous time, the cast, the backers, everybody was thrilled and excited, and then you say, Steve, I mean, does he ever get excited about anything, these great shows that he wrote with you that you've brought back in such exciting ways?
Well, God, I have to be careful. Not in the same way, let's say, that he's excited about shows for which he also did the music.
Yeah, and they always say that, that he doesn't care about that early, brilliant work,
Does he appreciate, though, what you have done to give these shows a new life, to re-examine them?
I can only say ask him.
Would you ever consider directing one of his shows for which he wrote the music and lyrics and for which he might be really enthusiastic to have you tackle?
Oh, I'm sure he wouldn't.
Before we get off of Sondheim, there's a long-standing story saying that he really wrote the music for Officer Krupke. Is there any truth to that?
No.
All right.
I think Lenny Bernstein wrote the greatest theater music ever written, and I don't understand why young composers don't try to emulate him. But they don't.
They try to emulate Steve.
Yes.
And with the results, I'm afraid that they're accomplished pieces, interesting pieces, but they don't have Steve's gift for melody.
Well, also Lenny wrote real theater music. I mean, it makes you just jump out of your seat.
Every note in West Side Story makes you bounce around.
Well, not every note. I mean, there was a song neither one of them were very proud of, I Feel Pretty, but it's a big hit.
Yeah.
And it's in this version, except I send it up.
Yes, and the girl does it so beautifully.
Oh, the girl she's incredible.
I'm interested, you talk about dealing with Jerry Robbins in this book and in your memoir. And one of the points you make, and I think it goes to a point about being a director and having a success, you seem to indicate that your relationship with Robbins was very good, you were good friends until success came, and then he went off in this ego trip. Is that what did indeed happen to him? And how does a director who has a big hit prevent that egomania from setting in?
I think it's rather common to theater people, or to anybody who cares about having their name someplace. And they want what amounts to they want everything. Well, there is no everything. And the sooner you realize that, the better off you are. To me, the pleasure should be in doing the work. If it doesn't excite me, I don't want to do it. And I don't do it for anything really more, well, I did a lot of it for Tom.
Yes, your partner.
Yeah. But the pleasure is in doing the work. And in the book, I think I say this, I really care more for the company than for myself.
The company of the
The
performers
actors in it, yeah.
Yeah.
But you use as a cautionary tale, you talk about another director who you say they get enough success and they become deluded, that they can do things that they can't. They get over their heads.
Well, everybody in the theater wants to do a musical.
Yeah.
That's where the money is.
You hope. But I think, yes, the first chapter in the book is called In the Bones.
Yes,
And you either have the musical in your bones or you don't. And I don't think many directors do.
Yes, you say you can't learn it, you can't acquire it with practice, it just has to be in your bones.
You know, you as it says in Gypsy, either got it or you ain't.
That's right.
Well, you're talking about the Sam Mendes, we should say, you say him in the book, production of Gypsy. That was, you know, to my mind, I mean, not a patch on the one that you did with Patti LuPone last year. How, though, I mean, how does someone like a Sam Mendes who doesn't have it in the bones get hold of a great show of yours?
Well, it was originally supposed to be done in London. And the producers wanted Sam, and I had directed it twice, and I didn't want to direct it again.
You directed a terrific production with Angela Lansbury.
And Tyne
then
Daly.
with Tyne Daly.
Yeah.
And I was curious to see how somebody else would do it. Well, curiosity killed a cat.
Yes, we interviewed you when that production was in development, and you were very excited about it. You were very excited about the prospect of Bernadette Peters.
Right.
You were very optimistic. And then, now, as I think you know, Michael and I were at the first preview. I shall never go to a first preview again. And the curtain went up, as you describe in your book, the curtain went up after the overture. We were all excited, and then it went boom.
Yeah, right.
That person walked across the
It was
stage
it was
with the sign.
molasses.
Yes.
Well, that's because he didn't have it in his bones.
And there was no way, I know that you worked on that production, I know you gave him a lot of notes. In fact, I think a lot of the notes you gave him to Gypsy, your editor saw and thought these would make a great book.
Exactly.
Couldn't he learn from you, from your notes, from your direction?
Sam tried, but directors, or some directors, have what is called a concept. And, you know, they live or die with it, and my notes didn't fit.
But when you said, I mean, and you say in your book, that with a musical, it's the first 5 minutes. You have to get the audience in the first 5
Right.
minutes. So when Sam Mendes had, and we should say for those who haven't seen Gypsy, it starts with cards saying the scene, that he had someone walk slowly across the stage and put the card in the slot, and it just went, as I'm repeating myself, died. And he didn't take a note on that you've just lost
No,
everybody.
Well, he wanted to create a different atmosphere,
Yeah.
and he succeeded.
It's very interesting, though, what you say, this notion of a concept, because one of the themes that comes through in this book, when you're directing a musical, you should approach it, if it's a good musical, you should approach it as a play, in that throw out the concept and go right back to what the characters are thinking, what they want, what the conflict is. In other words, go back to your book, your story.
Well, I think that's all theater. It all begins with character and emotion and what is it about. And I don't know what Sam thought Gypsy was about. And I don't want to dwell on him. I mean, that was an experience, and actually the good thing that came out of it was Tom disliked it so much. You talk about the first preview. He came up the aisle and told Robert Fox, who was one of the producers, what he thought about it, and they had a altercation, shall we say, and it was printed in the papers that I did it.
Yeah, well, that was me, I'm afraid.
Well, you were wrong.
I was close, but not...
Yeah, but then when the Patti LuPone thing came up, Tom said, "You have to do it." And I said, "Why?" He said, "You don't want to leave New York with the bad taste in its mouth of that gypsy. And you're the only one who can do a good one." And he and I were very close in every way, and I always did what he wanted professionally. And I said, okay. He also said it for another reason, which I only realized later. He knew he was dying of cancer, and he wanted to be sure I was busy.
That you had something to do.
Yeah.
Let me just ask you, on this Patti LuPone Gypsy, you also have a sort of a very interesting part of this book, too, which I think is instructive to directors who have success and have to deal with stars. That's the difference, dealing with a star and dealing with an artist and an actress. And in Patti LuPone, you had both.
Right.
And there was always the danger she could cross over into being the star.
Right.
How did you stop her from doing that?
It really came down to, I think the scene where it happened, I think, is in the book. The show was going to move to Broadway. And immediately she'd been desperate to get it to Broadway. I didn't care.
Yeah. You'd done it at City
I
Center?
had done it. I did it for Tom. I did it for what I thought the show would be. And it was accomplished. But then, by that time, she and I were very close.
Right.
And I also cared about the company and the designers. Everybody would make some money.
Yeah.
So, okay. But so when she finds out it's going to Broadway, she wants this, she wants that. And I thought, I'm not going into rehearsal with the diva.
Yeah.
So I called her and said, we have to have dinner. And she's no fool. She said, what's wrong? And I told her, and I said, I've worked with stars. They don't interest me. What interests me are artists. And she is one of the few. She really is. And I said, when you're the artist, I will do anything. She said, okay, let's go to work.
And you never had a star moment?
Never again.
I know you had your issues with the Sam Mendes production, but I know that you were a big supporter of Bernadette Peters in that Gypsy.
Right.
And you think maybe Sam had let her down.
Bernadette, who is a terrific woman, and I think a terrific actress in musicals, and she's going to be in a new play I'm writing.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
And it's not a musical.
Well, that's wonderful, yeah.
Did you?
She sings a song or two, but it's not a musical.
Did she come to see Patti LuPone and Gypsy? Was that a difficult moment
She
for her?
didn't come.
She didn't come, no.
No.
Who can blame her?
Did you invite her to see it, or did you just leave it?
I asked her, and I was up to her, and she didn't want to. But she, despite the fact that she is really a big star, she is very professional. The director wanted this, and that's what she did. And then the show was going to close, and she went to see another musical, which shall be nameless, which was a big hit. And she said, if that's a hit, Gypsy cannot close. So she went to the producers and said, I'll give up my salary, keep it open.
Really?
And then she did her performance. And it was very different. It was what I knew she could do, but it was too late.
Interesting. We got to wrap it up, I'm afraid. The book is mainly on directing, Gypsy, West Side Story, and other musicals.
Full of insights on the right way to do theater.
By Arthur Lawrence. West Side Story, terrific revival at the Palace Theater. And you're not done directing, right? I mean, you've got other things you're going to do next?
Well, I'm going to direct this new play at the George Street Theater.
What's it called?
Come back, wherever you are. You can guess what that's about. And hopefully it's with Bernadette and Lauren Bacall.
Oh, what a wonderful cast!
Okay,
Arthur Lawrence, it's always a pleasure, and congratulations on your success on Broadway these last couple of years.
Thank you.
I like to be in America. Okay, by me in America. Everything free in America. city of San Juan. I know a boat you can get on. Bye-bye. Hundreds of flowers in full bloom. Hundreds of people in each room. Automobile in America. Chromium steel in